Welcome to Home Health 360, a podcast presented by AlayaCare. I'm your host, Jeff Howell, and this is the show about learning from the best in home health care from around the globe. Welcome, everyone, to another edition of Home Health 360, where we speak with leaders in home health and home care from across the globe. Today, we have an exciting guest. Jennifer Tucker out of Englewood, Colorado, is the Chief Operating Officer of Homewatch CareGivers, a home care franchise with over 100 locations and is part of the Authority Brands family. Jennifer spent almost 16 years as VP of Marketing and Business Development, responsible for growing profitable revenue for the network, and has moved into the COO role over the last few years. Jennifer, congrats on the upcoming 20th anniversary at Homewatch, and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Jeff. It is my great delight to be with you today.
So give us a little bit of background. 20 years is, I feel like you should get the modern day loyalty award for staying with one employer for that long. And I'm sure you've seen a lot of changes in that time at Homewatch. Give us a sense as to what led you into home care and Homewatch CareGivers specifically, and a little bit of history on how things were back then and how they've changed over the years.
Absolutely. So yeah, this industry, when I first started 20 years ago, which is crazy. I love to joke that I started when I was 16, but in reality, that is not the case. It was still relatively new. A lot of the big players were just getting going in home care at the time. But we actually, as Homewatch, had been in the industry since 1980. Before that, we were actually dog watch. We were watching people's dogs and then watching their homes, thus the home watch part. And our founder had also discovered that there was a very meaningful part of providing care to like a grandma that was living in someone's, mother-in-law apartment, and was like, well, while I'm watching your home and your dog, who's looking after, Mabel? And it was like, wait, this is actually the most important thing we could be doing. And this is this huge need. And that was kind of the birth of Homewatch CareGivers. So I came into the mix in 2002 when things were really just getting going. Really, I think, for me, it was a healthcare move. I am a healthcare person by trade and really wanted to impact population health and hadn't really even thought that much about the senior population, but found that I just absolutely loved it. And there was this huge opportunity to impact so many people's lives with meaningful care. So I just kind of immediately fell in love with the industry and figured that this would be one of the best places I could spend. I didn't really think it would be 20 years, but it's going to be 20 years, hopefully plus. And it's been, just an incredible place to spend all of these years seeing this industry mature.
It's amazing to me. I know that there are so many people that are outside of the industry that still don't know about home care and home health. And I've been in the industry for 4 years, and I really didn't know anything about it prior to joining. I remember the first time I went to the Homewatch CareGivers website, and it didn't occur to me. I just saw these other brands, and you talk about the dog watching. It seems like there's about somewhere between 6 and 10 different brands that Authority has that are all home related. And so that's an interesting story that I guess the company started off with these other services around the home. And then it just occurred to someone someday, wait a minute, there's more ways for us to serve the homeowner here.
Exactly. It has come full circle. But now, our dog watching or our pet service arm is really duty calls. And now, we have, like you said, 10 brands under the umbrella of Authority Brands. And it's great to see all of us working together to take care of people, but also their homes and everything in and around their homes. So it's nice to have a larger organization to pull on as well. Lots of great economies of scale and things we can leverage.
And so for Homewatch, it's all non-medical, and I'm assuming mostly private pay. Do you do some Medicaid as well?
Absolutely, we do. And, it's funny you talk about non-medical and this idea that like we have to, and we have to put labels on things so people can understand them. But people really don't understand what home care is until they need it, right? And then someone turns them on to this idea that someone can come into your home or wherever you live and provide this great care instead of having to pick up and move and go to, a communal living environment. So we really don't see ourselves as non-medical. I know that's what everyone calls us, right? But there's nothing non about what we do. It's all about, all of this incredible work that we do to impact people's social determinants of health, which are so critically important around, eating well and mobility and being able to take medications appropriately and on time. And being able to have joy and spontaneity in your life is really it's considered non-medical, but it's so meaningful that I hate that it potentially takes away from the impact that we make. But yes, we have lots of private pay as payers, about 70%, and then about 30% of our franchise owners' revenue comes from, Medicaid, Medicare Advantage, Veterans Administration contracts, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and I think the evidence of the Medicare world acknowledging and saluting the social determinants of health and the what we all term as non-medical services. With Medicare Advantage, it's that acknowledgement that everything starts with being happy and healthy and living a fulfilling life.
Absolutely. Yeah. Something we really fell in love with years ago was an organization called Eden Alternative, and their Eden at Home kind of suite of services and philosophies is something that we just felt like, oh my gosh, this puts the words and the structure to the way we've always thought about care. And it's really about solving the plagues of boredom, loneliness, and helplessness that among like anything else we do, yes, we provided the bath. Yes, we, reminded the client about taking her medication, but it's really that connection that we make with our clients and our caregivers and our office staff. And we call it the care team that really makes this whole thing so meaningful, right? Like, our purpose for being every day, being in this industry every day is about empowering people. And that's really what the magic is in home care, that we can solve for those three plagues with spontaneity and close and continuing contact and helping people find meaning in their lives, the ability to give back. Even if you're living with some severe dementia, you still can make those connections. You still have something to give, and tapping into that is really the great joy in what we do in home care.
Yeah, I hear you. Okay, I'm going to ask you a question in 5 parts, one at a time.
Okay.
March of last year hits, and I'm assuming that you are in growth and expansion mode. I'm going to ask you a question that I haven't asked anyone before, because most people, I'll ask you the standard ones after this, but as someone who's played such a role in developing new franchisees, I'm going to make the assumption that March hit, and first of all, it's all hands on deck to deal with this curveball that no one has ever seen before. But secondly, I'm curious to learn what I'm assuming going to trade shows is the sort of number one way to try to find new franchisees. And then, although there's a narrative that a lot of people think that the demand for home care spiked after a pandemic hit, I'm also really curious to learn from you. What did the demand from new potential franchisees look like right away? Because I'm assuming that nobody is just immediately saying, let's go get into I think anyone opening up new businesses really took a drop to begin with. But at least initially, there probably weren't that many new potential franchisees coming to the table saying, I want to get into home care.
Well, that is the crazy thing for us, is that, yeah, we were all stunned in March and everything paused in place. Every initiative we had was put on ice, and it was like, okay, all we need to do is support our network on everything related to COVID-19, all hands on deck, 2 webinars a week for our network, figuring out every last little bit of how we could help support them through this. and business dropped for a few months for our owners, and everything was quiet on the franchise development front. But that changed very quickly. It was actually stunning. Last year, 2020, was our biggest growth year ever in terms of adding franchise owners. So we opened 42 territories last year. And I think that was the big surprise for all of us, that there is so much need. There are so many people that are like seeing this pandemic as an opportunity to just totally shift gears. I'm getting into this, new industry. People were like, yes, they're going to be leaving communal living environments and nursing homes, right, and assisted livings, and people are going to want to be at home, and I'm going to, be a part of this exciting industry. And we had just explosive growth. So it was crazy that, and for us at Homewatch CareGivers, we're very focused on franchise development, but our team is really just focused on supporting our franchise owners at the authority brands level. They're really doing the day in, day out of cultivating new candidates to become owners. So they just kind of full speed ahead. They continue to work on getting in great candidates. And then we just worked, tirelessly day and night with our franchise owners, who are amazing, on just making sure they had everything they needed to survive the pandemic and come out thriving. So we were able to both support our network and continue to grow in 2020, which was just phenomenal. And I can't say enough about my team that was able to help support our network, and then just our incredible owners who buckled down and figured out a way to survive and again, thrive.
So that's interesting. So that's an incredible, because I think you guys are around 156 total locations right now, if I got that right.
So we have 229 territories.
Okay.
220 of them are domestic, and then 9 of them are Canada and Latin America.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so these folks that say, I want to sign up and be a new franchisee, I get it. We need to take people out of facilities and people need to age in the home. But there's also, that's the perception from these potential franchisees. I've heard mixed stories on the client demand side. So on the one hand, clients are canceling any services that could be canceled for their own safety. And then on the other end, there's a potential influx of patients where, someone's getting their mom out of a home and back into their home. What were your thoughts on, what did you see? And maybe you had some franchisees that had differing results, but what are your thoughts on, what happened to the overall demand for visits right away, and how did that change in the months since?
Yeah, so probably what you've heard from some of the other leaders. At first, it was, I'm pausing services for the people who could. It was sort of more like your companion care focused clients that are like, well, I don't have to have home care. I can survive. And adult daughter or adult son or someone else that might be living nearby is working from home now and may be able to sort of look after things, right? So on the with the clients where it was maybe on the borderline of I don't have to have care, which tend not to be our clients, by the way. We tend to be taking care of people who have more significant needs, personal care, heavy duty, hands-on care needs with transfers and, bathing, that sort of thing. A lot of individuals living with dementia. So those clients tended not to stop services, but we definitely saw that dip for about 3 months where, care was canceled, caregivers were freaking out. I'm not going to clients' homes anymore. Everything kind of was a little dismal there for those first sort of 3-4 months. And then it just started to pick up. The care needs were there, people coming back from, going home from living communities. And it hasn't slowed down since, I would say, 2021. We've never had a higher demand for care. Almost every owner in our network has a waiting list and is having to, try to keep those clients warm and take care of them, like on the phone and letting them know we're looking for a caregiver for you. But we've never had more of a demand for our services than we do today. And I would say that's been building since like July of last year. So it's been sort of a full year of incredible amounts of demand. And then the caregiver part is obviously the really hard part. And I'm sure
that was my next question.
If only we could have caregivers that we could be cloning or anything else.
Well, Elon Musk is developing some humanoid robots, so maybe that will play into the labor pool at some stage.
Yeah, I think that's what he was doing in space. He was creating that. Yeah. Yeah. So the caregivers, I mean, our caregivers are amazing people, and there's just not enough of them. You know, they have such passion for taking care of people. What we can never do is, bring on our caregivers, our franchise owners, employees. We can never sacrifice quality. We can't hire caregivers that truly don't have passion for taking care of people or for empowering people, as I was talking about earlier, because it's never going to work. It's never going to be a good thing for us. To give people care that is substandard. It has to be fantastic care that's very connected. And so, unfortunately, with everything going on with CARES benefits and unemployment benefits, it's been extra difficult to get those great caregivers. And we'd rather have people on a waiting list or referring them to a competitor that's a wonderful provider that happens to have a caregiver available. We'd much prefer that than to try to bring on any caregiver you can find that fogs a mirror. That's never going to be our model. And then just, to provide substandard care is not an option for us. So unfortunately, there has been a lot of not being able to care for clients. And we've had to raise our rates fairly significantly across the board as well, to be able to pay caregivers what we need to in this incredibly competitive labor market.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a strange world too, where my prediction was, in the very beginning, I thought the sky was falling. I took a decent amount out of my my retirement fund to just sit it in cash just to see what's happening. And then lo and behold, all my stocks went up in value. My home went up in value. And now we've got more jobs than we have workers. So bring me through when COVID hit. I'm assuming there was also, you had a 3-month lull in the demand, which has now surged back. I'm assuming that for everyone across the board, the number of applicants for caregivers dropped suddenly and drastically. And then now we've got the issue of, you have some people that have hesitancy still. And I'm curious on your thoughts on, now that the unemployment benefits are gone, if that's a good sign that, the people that could go work will start to go fill these not only caregiver roles, but restaurants and retail and you name it. So curious on if you're starting to see a rebound in the number of applicants out there.
There is a bit of a rebound. I think, unfortunately, what we knew from states that had sunsetted their unemployment benefits well before September, we kind of had a good sense already that wasn't going to be the silver bullet. We knew that this is still going to be really tough. And I think it still will continue to be very difficult to find great caregivers. I definitely will get some rebound. So I don't want it to sound like doom and gloom, but we just have to be incredibly creative and put together just the right packages in our different communities. And what works in Ann Arbor, Michigan might not be the best model in LA. In terms of what caregivers need. And in fact, you can't even generalize it to a place. It really is very person specific. What's it going to take to get someone to come work for you? It's such an employees market right now that, for some people, it's a child care benefit. For others, it's a healthcare benefit. For others, it's more PTO, that kind of thing, or just, hourly pay or a guaranteed paycheck of at least 40 hours a week, or I want X amount of overtime. It's so different by person. And then having that customized approach, the customized approach we've always had for our clients really has to be applied to our caregivers. What do each of them need to be able to feel supported and excited about staying with us and staying with us for years? Our best caregivers have been with us for many, many years, right? You lose them early on. You lose them for those first shifts or the first month or two that they're hired, and then they're gone if you can't figure out how to really stitch yourself in with them and provide a really meaningful place of employment. So it's not going to get a ton easier. It's going to maybe get a little easier, but we've got a whole new landscape, I think, in the United States around workforce, and we're competing with lots of different industries now. And I think gone are the days of the $12 an hour caregiving job. Those days are over. We skipped over $15 minimum wage very quickly and are very much at a place where most of our owners are paying 15 to 20 very, very easily.
Oh, interesting. I would think you're pretty progressive in that, because I don't think I've really talked to many home care agencies where that's the case.
Yeah, and I can't speak for every single market because there are some absolute exceptions, El Paso, Texas being one of them, where the Medicaid reimbursement rate is under $14 an hour. So you can imagine you can't really pay caregivers 15. But generally, I would say across the board, yeah, the demand is such that you are having to pay, well above minimum wage in most markets. And now you have to pass that along to consumers. And the interesting thing, we've known this for years, having done a lot of analysis of calls coming in to our offices, that really there's some point at which you can't keep raising rates, but honestly, we're not there. We haven't hit that point. Families are saying, okay, if it's $40 an hour instead of 30, I'm going to pay it because I need this care for my loved one.
Mm-hmm.
And it really is, again, it's those higher acuity cases that we tend to take care of, where it's really not an option to leave mom home alone, right? You can't just throw in a remote care monitoring unit and say, oh, she'll be fine for the next 10 hours. People are finding ways to put together the money if they don't have long-term care insurance or they don't have a payer source in the VA or aid and attendance or anything else. How do we make that work? And that's, part of why I'm so excited being part of Home Care Association of America, that we're pushing for a lot of benefits for families to be able to fund care a little bit better, because the prices are going to stay high. We're not going to suddenly be at the place again where care is $25 an hour. I mean, those days are gone.
Mm-hmm. I've always wondered if we'll see more, at least in the private pay market, of surge pricing, where Wednesday at 9 a.m. is the most popular time slot, and it costs more for a visit during that hour than, Friday at 7 p.m.
Oh, I think those days could absolutely be coming. I mean, I don't know that our owners are necessarily doing that right now. I have not heard of that. However, I think it makes a ton of sense. It's just based on its supply and demand. And as you bring on new clients, you realize I can't bring on this new client unless I'm paying X to the caregiver. And so, you've got clients calling around and saying, I've talked to 3 other home care companies. Nobody can take me. I'll pay whatever at this point.
Yeah.
Can you do anything for me? And so we're all just trying to piece it together. All of our, all of the other great brands that we work alongside of, we're really all in the same boat and really just trying to give people the care they deserve. It's heartbreaking to all of us to not be able to do that and to have to say no.
Mm-hmm. So you guys have locations in 3 in Ontario, Canada, where I'm located. You have Chile, Colombia, Mexico, Guatemala, and I missed out on my territory rights in Costa Rica. Do you tell me about your expansion strategy, and is it, if people come to you and they want a territory, do you just sort of vet them and move forward, or do you guys have a bit more of a plan in terms of we're going to, go hard on these companies and we have a specific rollout strategy? And I'm also curious to know what you folks have also learned on. I'm sure there's challenges within each country that have come up that you're grappling for the first time.
Well, there are. So, and it's, we always, historically, we had very, very entrepreneurial owners and founders, and they were like, let's take opportunity anywhere we can find it. We were in Japan and Australia and New Zealand and all over the place. I think, quite frankly, and I say this with love, I think places where our founder really wanted to go visit, right? So we had really, really great places that we were opening locations. But really what we've discovered through the years is that it does, like you said, Jeff, it takes a lot of resources to be able to support people in other countries. And you really need feet on the ground. So that's why we've had a master franchise in Costa Rica, helping support the other folks in Latin America. But our growth strategy is entirely right now about domestic. So we know that domestic US, we have so much white space. This is really where we're focused. Would love to have a master franchise in Canada just to be able to expand there. It's very similar to the United States and obviously has some nuances with the way that their healthcare system is set up. But we feel like we know it well enough, and you don't need to speak, typically other language other than some Quebecois. We're really you're not going to see us into a lot of other countries, I would say, in the next probably 3 to 4 years. After that, who knows? As we build out our domestic locations and get a little deeper here, then I'm sure at some point we will look more significantly at some of those other expansion opportunities outside of the US. But to do it well, it really does require an awful lot of resources. And we just feel like our best opportunity and our lowest hanging fruit is here in the US.
Yeah, sure. If there's more work to be done here and you have the economies of scale, then why not?
Yeah.
By the way, your map of your locations on your website is the best in all of home care. I like how you can zoom in and out and you can see by region number of locations that you have. But the other really niche thing I noticed about it was some big home care franchises, when you go to the website, it picks up your IP address, or when you call them, you call the 800 number, it picks up your dialing area code and it gives you the local office, which for a lot of use cases is smart because it routes you to the closest location. But for the use cases where it's often, the daughter is calling from one area code to find care for mom who lives across the country, you guys have an amazing website to really navigate and figure out, because there might even be multiple offices with different territory owners within the same city.
Absolutely. Well, shout out to our marketing team and to our folks, our digital partners at Scorpion. For sure, that's the case, right? Adult daughter oftentimes is like living in New Jersey and her mom is now, or dad is in Florida. And so don't give me to the New Jersey office. That's not really helpful. So I think they've done a really nice job thinking through what the consumer behavior really is and trying to have it not feel like a headache. Because as we had already established, like people already don't know what we do. Like don't make it even harder for them to have to figure out who they're supposed to call. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Jennifer, tell me about an industry narrative that you think is something that's widely believed, but you think may not necessarily be true.
Well, Jeff, great question. I actually kind of already wove it into something we were talking about earlier, and that was really around this idea of non-medical or unskilled, right? I think that is a place where people just don't, because again, they don't know what we do, and they know that what we do isn't home health and it isn't hospice, right? But they figure that out over time. They don't know that initially. They really think home health and providing skilled care through Medicare with nurses and physical therapy and occupational therapy and everything else is really part of what we do. And it really isn't. They are two different, very disparate industries. But it doesn't mean that what we do is not very, very meaningful. I think, interestingly, in several other, I would say, more progressive countries, they spend 80% of their money on social determinants of health when it comes to healthcare, and impacting those things that really will make a difference longer term. Proper eating and making sure that you have, access to good health care and that you have rides to doctor's appointments or you have virtual visits. We're really taking care of the person very holistically. In the United States, we focus on that 20% of the acute care, which is the most expensive kind of care, and longer term leads to poorer outcomes than really focusing on people's holistic wellness. So I think we kind of have it wrong in the United States. I think a lot of people now know that. But home care really fits into that 80% of the focus where we really can make a difference in people's lives. And so to call it unskilled or non-medical, it just doesn't do our our industry the justice and give it the credit it deserves. It's so impactful. Every time we talk to a client that says, or a family member that says, I wish I had known about home care sooner. It's made the biggest impact in my life. And had I not discovered this, the end of my dad's life would have been very different. And we would have had this incredibly different experience that wouldn't have been nearly as positive as we can help make it. So I just love being able to talk about the importance of what our industry really does.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like the butterfly effect of companionship visits very early on can really help steer where the health path goes and sort of avoid some negative health events, although it's may not always be the easiest thing to measure.
Well, absolutely. And it's been nice to see the media and a bunch of people now talking about the fact that loneliness is as damaging to your health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And I think until we were talking about that kind of thing, people really weren't connecting that this idea of social isolation and loneliness and lack of having meaning and an ability to continue to give back and have positive impacts on the world, even if you were nonverbal or living with severe chronic illness, that you can still tap into things and you can still have people share meaningful stories about their lives, learnings, still be able to make you smile, still be able to paint, listen to music. The things that bring people joy are still things that they can make a bigger difference than being on the right medication or having the right surgery, which I think is crazy to a lot of people. And not to say you don't need surgeons and you don't need important medication and chemotherapy and anything else, but that you can really keep people as happy and as wanting to continue to live via all these more social interactions than oftentimes you can just with, sort of classic traditional medicine.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a little anecdotal, but I remember when I was taking psychology in my university days and the statistics on how soon people die after they retire. And the analogy was that they had 40 years worth of meaning, right? They get up at the same time every day, they raise their children, they go to their job, they, have some kind of authority at their job. There's something that they have to achieve and their whole life is structured. And then you retire and, you've lost your purpose. Yeah.
Yeah. That sense of purpose is huge. I mean, I've read several books about the Holocaust, which is kind of a strange thing to tie in here, but where, talking about just the smallest things when folks were living in concentration camps, being able to even get a scrap of bread and being able to share it with someone else to be able to help them was something that could help people get through the day and continue to move on, right? Like any amount of, obviously the extreme example, but any amount of being able to give back and help another human being can lead to just this passion to I have to move forward. I want to keep going. I want to make a difference in the world. I want to, be able to help my neighbor. If you can be doing those things, I absolutely agree. You can have a lot better longevity and certainly quality of life. So, yeah.
All right. Well, we're almost coming up against our time here. I will get you out of here on this. Give us a reason to be optimistic about the future of home care.
Yeah, so many. And, I think you've named a couple of them. The fact that some of the payer sources, Medicare Advantage being a newer one for us in the industry, are really taking note of the importance of what we're doing, really signals that home care is here. It's here to stay. It's part of the actual continuum now. It doesn't feel so much like we're outside of things. We're really more integrated. So that's very exciting. And then just the need, right? The demographics of the aging of the population. There's just no question that we're going to have so many clients to service over the course of the next 20, 30 years that then we even are able to service. So we're not going anywhere. There's incredible amounts of opportunity to be had to help people and their families live out their lives in purposeful ways. And so, and no shortage of people interested in buying into a business that has this this feel-good component to it, right? That has a mission and a margin.
And so with 229 territories, how many are still available?
Oh, still lots and lots. Like probably, depending on how we continue to size our territories, a good 300, 400. So if anyone is listening and is interested in getting into the home care space, we have lots of opportunities in major metro areas as well as some of those smaller metropolitans. And the nice thing is you can tap into sort of high income areas with private pay as well as some of those lower income areas with Medicaid and VA.
Yeah. Well, I'm on the map page because it's just my favorite. So, and there are a couple big buttons for franchise opportunities here. And if you're listening right now, go to homewatchcaregivers.com and then click on the locations map and you'll see what I see when you zone in and out. It's hours of fun.
Awesome, Jeff. Thanks for doing my job for me and doing it so very well. I really appreciate it. Yep.
Yeah. And if you're looking for care, it's also great that you can put in, you can just type in your city, state, or zip, and it's all centralized here. Each of the franchisees has their own branch out website from this central spot. So I think you guys have done it right, where you can go to the mothership and get all the information there as if it's one corporation, but then each of the franchisees have their own particular services, and then you can sort of go to the that particular franchise that works for you. So yeah, well done on this. Kudos to the marketing team. It's always been my favorite in the industry. Well, super, Jennifer. I appreciate you taking the time. I know we both have hard stops coming up, and I really, this was a lot of fun. We missed Jennifer Ramona today. She had another commitment, and I was going to brag that we finally have a marine biologist on the show because I looked her up and I saw that I'll have to save my marine biology jokes for another time when she's able to make it.
Exactly. Well, she will be more available starting in October, so feel free to invite her to the show, and she can talk all about, I don't know, frogs and counting. I don't know. There was all kinds of things she was involved with, but she'll tell you all about it.
That's great. Super. Well, thanks again, Jennifer, and hopefully we can catch up in real life sometime soon.
All right. Thank you.
Take care.
Take care.
Home Health 360 is presented by AlayaCare. First off, I want to thank our amazing guests and listeners. To get more episodes, you can go to alayacare.com/Home Health 360. That's spelled Home Health 360, or search Home Health 360 on any of your favorite podcasting platforms. The easiest way to stay up to date on our new shows is to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. We also have a newsletter you can sign up for on alayacare.com/Home Health 360 to get alerts for new shows and more valuable content from AlayaCare right into your inbox. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.